Discussing that today and discussing, stages of the tournament and how you should adjust based on what stage you are in. And I think a lot of people have unrealistic expectations, especially towards the later stages. Before we get started with that, though, we have a big sale going on right now. Check it out at pokercoaching.com/Cinco de Mayo. I realize a lot of you are stuck at home enjoying your tequila. So while you're enjoying your tequila, you might as well enjoy some poker coaching and improve your skills while you have a party. Because what's better than learning poker and having a party? So today, stages of the tournaments. This is a question that one of you asked me about. I suppose I can remove it from my list. I have a bunch of topics that you all sent in for me to discuss, so I appreciate that. If you ever have ideas for things for me to talk about on a little coffee, email them to me, support@pokercoaching.com. I'm happy to hear from you. So, stages of the tournament. I personally don't really think about stages of the tournament. And I think what happens to a lot of people is they think, oh, I'm in the early stage, so I should do blank. Or I'm in the late stage, so I should do blank. But really, I'm more so thinking in terms of stack depth. And not even my stack depth, but effective stack depth. Because sometimes, let's say you're on the bubble, right? Sometimes on the bubble, you may have 100 big blinds, but everybody else has 10. Other times, you may have 30 big blinds, and everybody else has 30. Those two scenarios are going to play out incredibly differently, even though you are on the bubble in both scenarios. So just the straight idea of, I'm on the bubble, therefore I should do blank, does not really apply. Instead, what applies is, what is my stack depth compared to my opponents? And what are the relevant payout implications? That said, we'll talk about early stage, middle stage, bubble, just in the money, final table bubble, 5-handed, 4-handed, 3-handed, 2-handed, etc. So we'll be discussing all of that today. If you want lots and lots of information about this, again, check out pokercoaching.com/Cinco de Mayo. If you're enjoying this, click like, click subscribe, click share. I would appreciate it. All right, so at the beginning of a tournament, you should basically play it like a cash game. The only difference, I think, is that you need to be a little less willing to go for thin value once the pot gets big. Because you don't want to lose a large chunk of your stack and then not have a ton of chips. Is anybody having trouble on the YouTube stream? It seems like the YouTube stream is working perfectly. If you're watching this on Instagram, check out youtube.com/pokercoaching or twitch.tv/Jonathan Little. Either of those will give you the stream with chat that you can see from everybody else. All right, so in the early stages of a tournament, you should really just play kind of like a cash game. Not a whole lot changes. Besides, you don't want to lose big pots going for thin value, because whenever you make a marginal play, when I say thin value, you mean either thin value or like a marginal bluff. In those scenarios, you are going to want to make sure you have a big edge when you're putting a lot of chips in the pot. One way or the other. Like some bluffs are just obvious and you should take them. Some value bets are just obvious and you should make them. But if it's thin, one way or the other, you should probably shy away from it. Because if you lose a big pot, let's say you go from 100 big blinds down to 20, well, now you just lost a ton of your profitability in the early stages of a tournament. And you would rather avoid that if possible. That doesn't mean you should be a super nit. It doesn't mean you should be overly tight. But it does mean that, you got to be smart and not go for that. You may say, what if I'm playing a re-entry tournament where I can just bust and re-enter? The problem with that is that you don't want to think of each tournament as one actual long tournament, no matter how many times you enter. You want to think of each re-entry as one individual entry to any random tournament. A lot of people feel like they have to stick around in a tournament. They have to re-enter over and over and over again, because they're somehow emotionally involved, or they have to win this particular tournament. But I can go ahead and tell you, there's going to be lots of tournaments that you're going to play in your career, and you should not be emotionally attached to any of them. And realize that if you bust and you re-enter, you basically just squandered all of that ROI for that entire tournament. So you do not want to do that. So early stages, basically play it like a cash game, but slightly tighter once the pots get very big. Obviously, if you're playing against maniacs who don't care about payout implications, then, don't be quite so tight if they're blasting it, right? So if they're going to be blasting, then you don't need to be folding out pretty strong hands, right? But then how many minutes should you re-enter? Depends on a few things. It depends on your bankroll. Depends on how willing you are to accept variance. Depends on the structure of the tournament when you are re-entering. Because when you re-enter, you're just buying into a new tournament with that current structure. So like say you buy in last second, where you can buy in for 10 big blinds, like it's happening on some of the online sites like GG, ACR, etc. You're basically saying, I think I have a positive ROI in a tournament where I start with 10 big blinds with what is going to be a very turbo-y structure. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. I would venture to say you probably don't. And even if you do have an ROI there, a positive ROI, it's going to be like 2%. So if you have a 2% ROI, that requires you to have like 1,000 buy-ins in your bankroll, which is fine if you have it and you're willing to take on the variance, but most people are not. So that's that. Today's stimulus day for you. Congrats on the score. All right, so once the stacks start to get shorter in the middle stages, what is the middle stage? Let's pretend like half the field to, 20% of the field remains. Once we start getting here, stacks will inevitably start getting shorter. You still would prefer to make sure you're getting your money in with a decent edge, either by having a reasonably strong value bet or by bluffing with obvious bluffs. But at the same time, you're going to bust at this stage of the tournament sometimes. A lot of people get depressed when they start kind of getting near the bubble over and over and over again, and they bust. Like, why do I keep busting? I get ace king, I have 20 big blinds, I get it all in, they have nines, and I lose. And it happens over and over and over again. And recognize that happens, right? You are going to have to win some all-ins in every poker tournament you play. Very rarely are you going to have just a nice, steady upswing where you just win the tournament. Funny enough, I have 2 Wpt titles right behind me. We have a little circular ball one right, or circular disc one right there, and we have a globe one right up here. The circular disc was at Mirage. I got it all in about 20 times in that tournament and won the vast majority of them. That was lucky. Actually, right at the end of day one, I lost a big flip. I had, it was either ace king against tens or tens against ace king, one of the two, I don't even remember. It was against Michael Binger, and I do remember that. And so we got it all in for like a 200 big blind pot or something absurd, which was probably too big. But back in the day, we were all blasting. We didn't know what we were doing. And I lost. So I was down to like 8 big blinds. I come back for the next day, and then I just win every hand for the rest of the tournament. Sometimes that happens. And clearly, you got to be pretty lucky to win every all-in. This one over here, though, at Foxwoods, I had basically the chip lead the whole tournament and just kind of ran over the table the whole time. It was not all in much at all. And that is very, very important to realize that you're going to have different experiences when you play tournaments, right? So understand that sometimes you're going to run hot. Sometimes you're going to just run over the table. Sometimes you're going to be somewhere in the middle. Sometimes you're just going to get completely crapped on and lose every hand you play. And that is A-okay. I was reviewing all my tournament hands from the other day when I played on Sunday, and 2 tournaments, I actually busted on the first hand. Now, to be fair, they were the first hand of a late entry, so I'm buying them like 15 big blinds. But that kind of thing happens. So recognize that that is normal. What if you go really card dead with a big stack in the later stages of the tournament? Stay with 100 people left. Well, 100 people out of what? 100 people out of 10,000 or 100 people out of 150, right? Usually you want to just use blockers as bluffs. You're never super card dead to where you just don't have any king 3 suiteds, right? So if someone raises and you're in the cutoff hijack, low jack, whatever, you can just pop it in there with a 3-bet, but look for spots. But like you just can't push it all that much, because if everyone else is playing reasonable cards and you're also doing your best to play reasonable cards, you can get a little bit out of line, but you really can't get a lot out of line. So I would tell you to follow the implementable charts at pokercoaching.com, and you're going to find there actually are a decent amount of spots where you may not be 3-bet bluffing. If you're not a Poker Coaching member, go to pokercoaching.com/Cinco de Mayo right now and sign up. If you don't like the content there after you sign up, tell us you want a refund. If we do not help you, we do not deserve or want your money. We want to make sure that you are making the most out of the content that we give you. All right, so middle stages, realize stacks are getting shorter, but at the same time, you really can't apply a whole lot of pressure to any particular player, because everybody realizes at this point we're not really near the money. Now, you may find some players really care about getting in the money, and when there's 40% of the field left, they'll start being tight. But most people don't. Most people realize that that's just not the case. And also, in today's tournaments, for the last 10 or 15 years, well, maybe 5 or 10 years, they've paid about 15% of the field instead of 10% or less like they used to pay in the past. You all may not know this, but in old school poker tournaments, they paid the final table, period. So if there were 22 people, they paid 9. If there were 800 people, they paid 9. And it's pretty fun stuff. So those, like back in the day, there were sometimes very huge payout implications for getting in the money. But nowadays, there's not quite as much, because when you get in the money now, you get 1.5 buy-ins back in a lot of tournaments. It's just not that big of a deal. It's a reasonable amount, but it's not like, 8 big buy-ins or 8 buy-ins or something like that. Do you think the idea of not having to go all in a tournament is generally a good thing? I mean, you'd rather not be all in a tournament, but you don't get to pick. If you take a shot at a higher cash game, how do you know if you should stick to it? You shouldn't? Depends on what a shot means. Usually when you're taking a shot, you give yourself like 3 or 4 buy-ins, and if you lose, you move down. Because then, if you don't move down, you're just basically saying, this is my new game and I'm going to play it under bankrolled. We're going to have the home game anytime soon. We are trying to find a good solution. PokerStars is not a great one for a few reasons for us personally, and we can't find a good one that will allow us unlimited entries. All right, middle stages. Again, just kind of play normally. Really not a whole lot should be changing. What do you think of paying 15% of the tournament field? It's become the norm. I mean, I don't know. What do I think of it? It's what the organizers have decided to do. I would generally say that the organizers, in theory, should pay as many people as the players will allow them to, because the tournament organizers want a lot of people cashing so that they can have money to play again and then they can rake more money. A professional poker player wants it to be winner take all, because if you're a professional, you should win the tournament more often than other people. Even though, let's say there's 10,000 people, you may win it 1 out of 5,000 times. Whenever you win it, you're just going to win it twice as much as everybody else, right? So you have 100% ROI. 100% ROI is clearly great, even though there will be infinite variance. Obviously, that's not going to fly, though, because most people just don't cash very often. And casinos really, 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 really do not want the players winning tons of money and just cashing it out and like buying a house. Because if you cash it out and buy a house, that money's long gone and the casino's never going to see it again. But if they give everybody $10,000, they might fire that back in. All right, next, let's talk about the bubble. Phil says, please talk about tactics for the bubble. Well, here we are, Phil. Be patient. We already said we're going to discuss it. Here we are. So on the bubble, this is when you are nearing getting in the money. Now, what is the bubble and what is not the bubble? It's kind of tough to say. Some people start caring about the bubble from like 20% of the field down to 15%. Some care about it when there's like one person away from the bubble. Some people are just oblivious. They don't even care. Some people start caring about it when there's 30% of the field left, right? So it's always difficult to know how much pressure you can apply in various scenarios. But typically when you are the big stack on the bubble, you want to be applying lots of small amounts of aggression. So if they fold you want to be raising a lot, assuming you're not going to be getting jammed on a lot. And you need to be able to pay attention and foresee if in these scenarios, you are going to get jammed on a lot. So if you're raised and you have a bunch of loose aggressive players behind you with 15 big blinds, even if you are kind of near the bubble, you should expect to get jammed on a decent amount of the time. Marcus says, min raise almost every hand is the big stack. You should not min raise almost every hand is the big stack. If you have low cards and you're in early position, that is not a good spot to raise. You should just be folding, because it's too likely someone you have to act is going to play at you. Now again, it depends on how bad your opponents are. Some people are super nitty. If you raise, they'll fold ace-jack with a 15 big blind stack when you're the big stack, which is a disaster. They should be all in every time. So, how bad are they? And you have to figure that out. You have to pay attention. That's what I'm trying to tell you all. If you have a middle stack on the bubble, you often want to be trying to apply pressure to the small stacks while staying out of the way of the big stacks. So say you have a medium stack of, let's say, 20 big blinds, and there's a big stack on your left with 50 big blinds. You're going to just have to be tight unless the big stack is oblivious. If the big stack doesn't care that you're on the bubble and they don't care that you have a 20 big blind stack, they're just going to fold if you raise a lot, well, then you can just raise a lot. You can act as the big stack. But if they're going to 3-bet you every single time, then if you're going to be getting 3-bet a ton, you clearly can't open very wide. because that's just going to make you become a short stack, right? So you want to look for situations that are going to be advantageous for you in positions which are not. If the big stack's on your right and they fold, and you have the medium stack and everybody else has a shallow stack, well, then you get to min raise a lot, right? And that is going to be highly beneficial to you. So you want to be trying to find where can I apply pressure and pick the pots very frequently. As the shallow stacks, so it depends on what a shallow stack is. Sometimes the shallow stack is 5 big blinds, sometimes it's 15. In those scenarios, you often want to be applying pressure to the medium stacks. And you usually want to be doing this by just open jamming. When you do have a shallow stack on the bubble, you can't really get away with min raising, because when you min raise and get jammed on yourself, you can really only call it off with very good hands. And you would rather just open jam with all of your reasonable hands. Now, again, it depends on the exact scenario. Sometimes you need to be tight, sometimes you need to be loose. There was a tournament in Barcelona I played one time where we were on the bubble. The bubble started on like day 4 or something. We show up on day 4, maybe it's day 3, I don't know what it was. And a player didn't show up. And we knew we were going to be in the money in about 10 hands, just based on how many chips that short stack had who just didn't show up. So, knowing that, what should everyone do? Well, the big stack should be raising a ton, and everybody else should just sit around and wait their 10 hands and collect their free cash for $15,000 or whatever it is. So, if that's the case, then you should really be very, very tight. So, what actually happened in this tournament? Well, it turns out 2 medium stacks decided to get involved in a pot. Someone raised, someone 3-bet, the other one 4-bet all in, the other one called. For like 50 big blinds, 40 big blinds, something like that. One of them had ace-king, one of them had queens, and one of them was out. And that person who didn't even show up, who started the day with 1.5 big blinds, they got in the money. And as Cool Monkey says here, is tournament poker really about luck? Obviously not. Because right here, those 2 players basically lit on fire a total of about $15,000. So is that luck? No, they're bad. If you're bad, it's not about luck, right? If everyone has the same skill, then everything is all luck. But everyone does not have the same skill level. One guy decided to not even show up. Think about how bad you have to be to not even show up, right? To be fair, like maybe the person had something better to do. Maybe they were a billionaire and they had a meeting they had to go to or something. But at the same time, it's pretty bad to not show up. It takes an immense lack of skill to play literally 0% of hands. You may say, oh, something maybe happened. Well, you got to plan ahead, right? That's why you show up to the tournament 30 minutes early. That's why you don't have other things going on before the tournaments, etc., etc., etc. But anyway, to say things are all about luck implies there is no possibility for a positive ROI. Like roulette is all luck, right? Is craps all luck? I would venture to say no. Because you can play craps in a way that makes you lose a little bit or lose a lot. Whereas in roulette, every single bet you make is going to lose the same amount, besides a few that lose slightly worse. But the vast majority of bets on roulette lose the same amount. In craps, the bets lose huge spreads. So if you're playing things like a craps tournament, there's actually going to be a pretty good amount of skill there. Assuming you're playing against people who are not competent. Because they're going to be making bad bets, and you're going to be making good bets, right? Good bets that lose less. What about a poker tournament, right? Can you play your cards better than your opponents play their same cards on average? Obviously you can, right? Which means, no, it's not all about luck. Obviously there's luck involved, because you can just get all bad cards, you can get all good cards. But the idea that you want to be thinking about this a ton is just ridiculous, because it doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. As long as you are playing with a positive expectation, you will win in the long run. I'm currently backing a player to some extent, and his EV big blind per 100 graph is like straight up. But his results are straight down. I've been watching his games, and he's just like making deep runs, getting it in, losing. It's like over and over and over and over and over again. And that happens. But it's a small sample, right? You have to realize small samples don't really matter. And when I say small sample, I mean like 500 games, 500 tournaments. That's as much as many people play in 10 years in live poker. But that's why volume is important. All right. So on the bubble as the shallow stacks, you really want to make sure that you are focusing on, can I realistically just play kind of tight and get in the money? And also, you want to make sure that you don't just like blind out. Just stone blinding out to get a min cash usually isn't the best idea, because then you have literally no chance to win the tournament. There are a few exceptions to this. Like say you have 5 big blinds and there are 4 other people with 2 big blinds. Yeah, you should blind out until one of those people go broke. But if you have 8, or let's say you have 12 big blinds and everybody else has 10 big blinds, you don't really just want to sit there and play super nitty, because first off, they're under like no immense pressure. And at the same time, like someone's gonna have to make something happen. And maybe that is you at that point. So you do want to be paying attention to that. Also, you want to pay attention to the strategies of the other players. Meaning, like say you have the 12 big blind stack and the other 4 players have 10 big blinds and you're on the bubble. If they're all just super duper nits, they will blind out. They will sit there and blind out, which means that you will have to sit there and blind out, which means you're going to get in the scenario where they have 1 big blind and you have 3, and they're going to be flipping, and you're going to be flipping to see if you get in the money, which is fine, but at the same time, it really kills your chance to actually win the tournament. Whereas with a 12 big blind stack, you actually do have some chance to double up to 25 big blinds and then make a reasonable run. So at that point, you're asking, is it worth it to collect a free min cash, or almost free min cash, in exchange for never winning the tournament, or basically never winning the tournament? And the answer is you probably want to give yourself a chance to make a deep run in exchange for bubbling sometimes. All right, so once you get in the money, for those just joining us today, we are talking about the various stages of the tournament and how I don't really think of them like this, but a lot of people do. Once we do get in the money, this is where things change substantially. So a lot of the shallower stacks will now have no incentive whatsoever to play tight anymore. When you get in the money in most tournaments, there are basically no payout jumps until like 80% of the remaining field goes broke. Like let's say when you get in the money, you get 1.5 big blinds. Let's say there are 100 people. When you get down to like 40 people or 30 people, maybe you get 3 buy-ins. Did I say big blinds? When you get in the money, you may get 1.5 buy-ins. When you get down to like the top 3% of the field, you may get 3 buy-ins. So it's not a big jump whatsoever. So in this scenario, you want to be playing lots of pots and trying to get a hold of chips, because there really is no substantial reward for being tight at this point. A lot of people think there still is, though. They'll say that they get an extra 0.2 buy-ins, and they'll play super nitty right then to try to collect that. And while you maybe should be a tiny, tiny bit tighter, you also should not worry about it so much, because it's just not that big of a deal. So when you do get in the money, as the big stack, very often you're going to want to play a very different strategy than when you were on the bubble, right? On the bubble, you were attempting to run over the opponents to some extent, whereas now, once you get in the money, if anything, you kind of want to sit back and relax and not be applying a lot of pressure, because your opponents have no incentive to be tight anymore at all. Let's see. You was in the hijack. You went all in with King Jack suited for 13 big blinds and you lost. Yeah, that's how it goes sometimes. Nice, easy shove. All right, so inevitably, you'll get down to the final table bubble, or maybe down to 20 people or something like that in the tournament. This is assuming we start with a big field, so now we're actually pretty deep in the game. So now, what should change? And the answer is pretty much nothing. A lot of people put an immense amount of value in making a final table, especially in live poker. Online, I don't think people care quite as much, but live they definitely do. And you have to ask, what do I actually get for final tabling a tournament? Well, you get nothing. You get a little bit of a payout jump. In some tournaments, 9th and 10th place, or maybe 10th and 11th place, actually pay the same amount of money. So you actually get literally no payout jump, or a minimal one, and you get to say that you made the final table. I would tell you to get the prestige of making a final table out of your head immediately, because it really does not matter. If they put you on TV, maybe you value being on TV playing poker, especially if you've never had that before. What's that worth, right? Are you willing to give up your chance to win the tournament in exchange for getting on TV? Maybe you are, maybe you aren't. Back to this championship at Mirage. There it is. There was a player who made a deep run with me, who one of my friends overheard him talking to one of his friends on the rail, and he was saying, like, yeah, I'm just going to play really tight and get in the money. I'm going to get on the WPT TV table. He really wanted to make the WPT final table and be on the Travel Channel. That's back in the day, for those who did not know. World Poker Tour started on the Travel Channel. So he really wanted to be on the Travel Channel. Or was it Game Show Network at this point? I don't remember. Time flies. Anyway, my friend relayed me this information, and every time that player raised, I 3-bet. Literally every time. We were down to 7 or 8 players. He raised, I 3-bet every time. And he folded the vast majority of the time. And that knowledge is very, very powerful. Knowing that this player really, really, really wants to make the TV final table, which is when you're down to 6 people on WPT, that player is just going to get crushed if I know that information. So if you can get any information like that, that's highly valuable. Quite often, people who have not made TV final tables care about getting on TV. And you can do some diligence and look that up, right? In general, though, you should not really care about final table bubbles all that much because it just doesn't matter. There really are still minimal payout jumps. And that's that. So once you get to the final table, now you want to be asking, where are the payout jumps? Sometimes they're not where you may think they are. For example, on the World Series of Poker main event, sometimes they have a giant bubble at the final table because they want everyone at the final table to get $1 million because, you know, $1 million means you're set for life nowadays. So they think. So let's say 10th place is 600K, 9th place is $1 million, 8th place is 1.025 million, and 7th place is 1.1 million, and then 6th place is 2 million, and then 5th place is 3 million. You see here, there's this absurd jump from 10th to 9th. Then there's no jump at all from 8th to 7th to 6th, or whatever it is. So in that scenario, you have to realize once you do get that payout jump, there's no more value in being tight anymore. So you always have to be aware of, are there actually relevant payout jumps at this particular spot or not? Usually at the final table, there's not a ton of payout jumps between something like 9th and 5th-ish place. You may like double the amount of money you get, but doubling the amount of money you get is not all that relevant when, like, let's say 9th place is 100K and 1st place is $1 million, right? You'd much rather try to get the $1 million, even though it's going to result in you getting 5th, 6th, etc. some portion of the time. So understand that. Usually at the final table, initially, you want to kind of shoot for the moon. And, well, if you look behind me back here, we have lots and lots of trophies. Can you all see all these trophies? We have lots and lots of trophies. And we also have a whole lot of 6th and 7th and 8th places that are not represented back there. And that's okay, right? You want to make sure that you give yourself the best chance of winning the tournament so you can win a substantial amount of money. What happens if people decide to try to make a deal when you don't have chips? I have an article. Google Jonathan Little, let's not make a deal. I discussed deal making there extensively. So at the final table, some people will still care about the payout jumps. In general, same logic applies as the medium stack. You should be applying pressure to the short stacks. As the big stacks, you should be applying pressure to the medium stacks. Medium stack really does have to be just kind of tight if they're really short stacks. So you want to just play good, fundamentally sound final table strategy. I discussed this thoroughly in 2 of my books, Excelling at No Limit Hold'em. I had a chapter on final table play, and in Secrets of Professional Tournament Poker, where I have lots of content there as well. I have a new book coming out, Excelling at Tough No Limit Hold'em Games. There's a chapter by a guy named Jaffe. He's one of the absolute best online players in the world, and he has lots of interesting strategies when it comes to playing the middle stack at a final table to let you play slightly more hands. Usually includes a lot of limping and playing a lot of medium-sized pots, which is an interesting strategy. It's a tough one to implement, but, you know, turns out if you're one of the best in the world and you navigate post-flop well, you can do it. And he has it's like 50-page long chapter on that. So that's a lot of fun. So once you get down to like 5-handed and 3-handed, this is where they're starting to become very big payout jumps. 5-handed, same logic still applies. You're really going to find the same logic applies in a lot of these scenarios. When you have the big stack, you want to be applying pressure to the medium stacks. And you want to make sure that you don't do anything to really jeopardize your big stack. So you should be doing a lot of raising, perhaps a lot of jamming over raises if they're also shallow when people open. But you don't want to just be like running big bluffs into players who also just must have good hands, right? Like say someone's playing 25 big blinds deep and you raise and they 3-bet, and they haven't 3-bet in, 40 hands. They probably have a good hand. So if you have something like ace-9 offsuit there, you should not just rip it in because you have a good blocker. You should fold. And I think what happens to a lot of big stacks is they get in their head that they are the big stack. They have to be the table bully. And that is absolutely not what you want to be doing. So that's it. Heads up, just play good, fundamentally sound heads up strategy. When it comes to making deals, I would generally suggest you don't. For many, 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 many reasons. You can read about that at, search Jonathan Little, Let's Not Make a Deal. All right, you all typed infinite questions not related to what I was discussing. You defined bubble as making the final table. I thought it meant being in or out of the money. We have two bubbles here. We have the bubble and the final table bubble. We already discussed the bubble. Maybe you showed up late. We discussed the bubble, then we discussed being just in the money, then we discussed the final table bubble. Those are different things. And like I said, the final table bubble should be irrelevant, although it's not for many people. You think all of the topics, every single one of them, in Secrets of Professional Tournament Poker are still relevant in today's game. I'm sure there's at least one that is not. That said, it's a very good book, and I actually went through it recently, and the vast majority of it still applies. I will say back then when I wrote the book 10 years ago, I did not necessarily know why I did what I was doing, but it turns out the vast majority of the strategies were very, very good. So that's fortunate. If you have any questions about buying a particular book or whatever, send an email, support@pokercoaching.com. When will the next Excelling book be released? June or July? I am basically done with it, so that makes me so happy. That was a giant project. Are you making good cash flow with this business? Or do expenses exceed gross income? No, we make money. For the longest time, though, I was losing about $2,000 a month. For about 10 years, just as a thank you to the poker world, I ran a poker training site, losing about $2,000 every month. And it turns out when you do something for the good of the community for many, 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 many years, eventually people pay attention and they start signing up. I'm always happy to help out the community because I've been helped out immensely by the community. If people are not aware of ICM, how can you adjust? Don't try to abuse ICM then and then just play good, solid chip EV poker, right? Recognizing that you should still not be making huge ICM errors. Let's see. You always carry a knife with you to the poker table. Yeah, just in case someone brings a gun, I guess. If you all are enjoying this, click like, click subscribe. What's the best way to make sure you have an edge? Study your database. Play a lot online. And then see, are you actually winning money when you play? Look at your big blind per 100. Look at your EV big blind per 100. Look at your return on investment. Look at your in the money percentage. Look at these numbers and see if they are positive and good. If they're positive and good, then you're good to go. If they're not positive and good, then you have a problem. If you don't play online, well, I tell you, put $50 in one of these online sites, get a program like Hold'em Manager, and keep track of what you are doing. I have a lot of the resources I use. I have links to them at jonathanlittlepoker.com/resources. Sometimes people make really bad deals. You made a 3-way chop with a quarter of a stack. Yeah, sure. If your opponents are not aware of math, you should make deals with them. Go to the article and read the article. It very clearly says this. If your opponents don't know math, you should crush them. I even list in that article ways to abuse the math in ways that people don't quite understand. Like you can make a save, or you can make a chip chop, or you can make an ICM chop, or you can do all sorts of stuff that may appear to be fair that is not fair. You may say, is it unethical to make a deal that's not actually fair? Well, it's kind of actually hard to know what a fair deal is, because an ICM deal is not fair, by the way. And a chip chop is not fair. And a save is not fair. None of these are actually optimal. It's actually very hard to figure out how much each person owns. ICM is probably the closest, but it's not even correct. What's the best tip for sit-and-go grinders? Learn to play sit-and-goes. I mean, what kind of question is that? Understand how to play sit-and-goes. I mean, realize payout implications exist. Understand ICM very well. What about making a final table in a progressive knockout tournament? In progressive knockout tournaments, you really just want to have more chips than your opponent so you can collect their knockouts. That is highly, 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 highly important. Highly important. Like, very often you'll see, like, 2nd, 3rd, 4th place makes less money than, like, 5th or 6th place in these progressive knockout tournaments because they just don't knock out anybody. So yeah, you want to make sure you cover people, which often will lead to big, big, big swings in progressive knockout tournaments because in the effort of trying to get a lot of chips, sometimes you're just going to get crushed. Henderson, again, send us email, support@pokercoaching.com. I don't even know which book you're referring to because I don't think I have a book called Crush Tough Cash Games. So please send us an email making it very clear what you want. Have you worked with Grips for a long... Wait. His love of Charlie Carroll content's going to ship the guy the 10K today. I mean, I worked with Grips for quite a while. He has lots of good content out there. Let's see. If you want to win a multi-table tournament like Bryn Kinney, do you play final tables more like cash games? What do you mean like Bryn? I'm not sure what you mean by win like Bryn Kinney. Hello.
I'll make a jellyfish.
What do you want? You're going to make a jellyfish?
Jellyfish.
How are you going to make the jellyfish?
Crayons. Can you show that?
What?
That.
This?
Yeah.
This? This is a bracelet we got from the Beau Rivage. Look how dirty it is. That's because it's silver, and silver tarnishes, and if you don't clean it, it will get tarnished. Let's show everybody how dirty this is. Look, we got this from the Beau Rivage. How nasty, huh? Does it actually say what it's from? No, it doesn't. You may not know this, but I actually chopped a tournament and then won this one.
Shoot that thing up there.
No, that's too heavy. It's way up there.
How about up there?
This one?
Yeah.
This one we got from Turks and Caicos back in 2007. We got three-handed with a guy named Mike McDonald and another guy named Choppy. They were the number 1 and number 2 online players in the world at the time. And, you know.
Dad, I want to show that poker.
This one?
No, that.
This?
Yeah.
This book?
That book.
Show them.
Daddy playing poker.
This is a book. Jonathan Little on Live No Limit Cash Games with Daddy playing poker. That's right. Daddy wrote that. Did you know that? Did you know I know English?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's nice. All right, you got to go.
Okay, jellyfish.
Say bye.
Bye.
You're going to make a jellyfish?
Yeah.
Say good luck in your games.
And play go okay game.
Bye. See ya.
What can you say? Bye.
I forgot about this tournament. This was a good one. What's going on with my hair? We got this. Can you see it? May not focus so well. Let's see. Take the focus. Take the focus. There you go. 2007. Oh my gosh. 13 years ago, we were three-handed with Mike McDonald and what's his name? Choppy. And we got him. All right. How can you get to follow your play and your results? Download Hold'em Manager and use it. You want a discount for things? Well, every once in a while, D&B Poker will run a discount. Books are too costly on Amazon. Well, believe it or not, the books are actually very cheap on Amazon. The nice thing about Amazon is they undercut every other retailer pretty much. And if you want to get things about the cheapest price, Amazon's usually your best bet. Let's see. Which of my books is best for rebuy tournaments? Realize all tournaments are the same. The fact that you're rebuying does not really matter. Do you know when you're going to be discounting Poker Coaching Premium again? Well, look right over here. Where's over here? Go to pokercoaching.com/Cinco de Mayo and look at that. We have discounts on all of the content because I realize you're all going to be having fun drinking tequila for the next week or so, so you might as well study poker while you're doing it. You have $4,000 for live poker and you're a consistent winning player. Should you play 1-2 or should you move to 1-3 when you have 6K? Well, so John, this is going to sound bad, but if you only have $4,000, you're not actually consistently winning all that much because, well, let's get out the calculator. Let's say you're making 10 big blinds per 100, which is $20 per hour, times 200 hours, right? Just one good hard month of play. You will have won that $4,000. So basically, you played one good hard month worth of poker, assuming you started with 0, and you probably didn't start with 0. So if that's the case, you have not put in enough volume to actually know you're a good, solid winning player yet. Unless you just like spent all of your money, I'd tell you to stop spending all your money. That's very, very important. But if you do have a 10 big blind per hour win rate, playing 1-2, it's probably okay to move to 1-3, but if you get back down to something like 4,000, definitely move down. Realize you're going to have a big risk ruin with 20 buy-ins, give or take. So be careful. Thank you for spending your money and becoming a training expert. Oh, you're welcome. What site do you stake your buddy on? I do not use the sites. I highly suggest you do not use the staking sites because the staking sites charge rake. You do not want to be paying rake on top of markup. That is a big, big, big mistake. Whenever you're backing, by the way this often works is you're backing a player in a tournament where they're going to have about 20 or 30% ROI. Okay? So if they're going to have 20 or 30% ROI, if you're paying 1.2 markup plus 5% rake, you're paying 1.25. For someone who's going to be 1.2 out the door because they have 20% ROI, right? Every buy-in they put in, they get 20% profit. But if you're paying them with the 1.2 plus 5% rake, now you're losing 5% every time you buy. Even then, like say they are actually plus 20% ROI, but you're buying at 1.1 plus 5% rake. Well, now you're getting at 1.15, but realize the rake is actually half of your profit. If you just go to that person directly, then you'll make twice as much money, 10% ROI. So you'll find that the rake of the staking sites is usually very detrimental. Also, if people have to sell on the staking sites, it's probably because they don't have very good respect in the poker community. Now, there are some exceptions to this. Usually when people are paying very, very high, sometimes it is hard to get backing for the high stakes stuff. But if people are selling action for like $50 tournaments, it kind of implies that they do not have the respect of the poker community who buy action. Like, I'll buy any action if I think it's good, and I know and respect the person. And because I understand math and how it works out the door. But the idea of people selling on the staking sites, unless they're like trying to sell out, 1% to 40 people just to like give people a fun sweat, if they're actually trying to sell out like 70% of their action on these sites, it's because they can't sell it otherwise. You're going to find that usually people who are buying on the sites are rather unsophisticated, or they just don't know the people personally or don't have good respect in the community. Obviously, there are exceptions to this, but if you want to buy someone's action, just go directly to them and then buy it with no fee. Now, obviously, then you have to worry about them cheating you or all this stuff, but if they're well respected in the community, you shouldn't have to worry about this, right? So we already discussed this. What's the best book for tournaments? Secrets to Professional Tournament Poker, Volume 1. What is considered to be a good big blind per 100 in tournaments? If you have something like 8 EV big blind per 100 in tournaments, you're usually thought to be pretty good. Mine's something like 11, which is good, probably running hot over the short period of time. 11 since I started playing, just 3 weeks ago, hardcore on Sundays. Small sample size and whatnot. But 8 is thought to be very good. As you play higher and higher, it'll go down. It is different when you're playing knockout tournaments. Actually, on a little coffee recently, we went through some of my stats, and we saw that I was losing in the high stakes games. I'm like, this just can't be right because this just doesn't make sense. Not because I couldn't be a losing player, but because I was like crushing the games. And then I realized very quickly I was actually going through a lot of progressive knockout tournaments. And in progressive knockout tournaments, you should sometimes make negative chip EV calls because they have big bounty payout implications, which are not reflected in programs like Hold'em Manager. We've already discussed this question about 6 times. Don't know why you keep asking it. If you're building a bankroll, would you avoid large multi-table tournaments? Absolutely. How do you use Hold'em Manager? Search Hold'em Manager and check it out. Do you prefer Hold'em Manager over Poker Tracker for the heads-up display? I've only ever used Hold'em Manager. I really haven't used Poker Tracker all that much, so I don't have much experience with it. As far as I know, they're basically the same. You adjust your strategy based on how many players have entered the tournament. No, not really. What changes do you make when playing larger field tournaments? Realize that sit and goes and tournaments are not the same because they pay a different percentage of the field. If you're the chip leader, is it better to use an ICM chop or chip chop? Take a second to think about that. Also, read the article. Search Jonathan Little, Let's Not Make a Deal. Can you learn anything on play money tables? I'm sure you can learn something, probably not much useful. You make 20 lives per 100. Should you jump up to... Look, if you're winning at the stakes you're playing at a high win rate and you're properly bankrolled, yeah, move up. Obviously. You think live poker will ever go back to the way it was? Yes. When will the app get fixed? If you have an Android, you can already get the new poker coaching app. We are currently just waiting on iTunes to accept a new app that will also let you play poker coaching quizzes, and we're going to have many other features coming in the near future. How do you practice putting people on ranges outside the poker table? Use the poker coaching quizzes. We have over 800 of them that will help you do this. What kind of question is that? A genuine from a paying customer. Oh, I wonder what this question was. You wonder if Uo-swang would be so snarky. Uo-swang. I don't know what Uo-swang is. All right. I think you're referring to upswing. If you want to talk about snarky people, that is where you want to go for snarky people. Please don't be offended if I do not enjoy your question. If it's been asked 100 times, or if the answer is, at least in my mind, kind of obvious, or just takes a few seconds of thought to figure it out, you should try to learn to figure it out. Realize, I'm not here just to spew all the answers to you. I'm here to also teach you how to think. For example, the question, is ICM chop better for the big stack or the little stack? Take a second, think about this. Actually sit down and think about it. And don't just, say, oh, Jonathan will give me the answer because he knows it already. Learn to figure out these things yourself. Please, please, please. Learn to think for yourself. I am not Google. I'm not just going to sit here and spew all the answers. I want to also teach you how to think for yourselves so that you can make good decisions at the poker table when you don't have Jonathan Little to sit there and tell you all the answers. LOL. He is blunt. There's no BS with him. There is indeed no BS with him. Again, I don't remember the question. Way too broad and vague, probably. How old is James? James is 3. How important is math in poker? Can you just use position knowledge of good hands and tight aggressive play in position? I mean, look, math dictates everything you do in poker and in theory in life. Math / chemistry / physics, right? And you don't necessarily need to fully understand the math and how to do the math at the table in real time if you understand principles that come from the math. I actually made a new fundamentals course at pokercoaching.com, and there is no math in it besides division, basic division. And even then, it's minimal, very minimal, okay? So I actually do think you can become reasonably competent and not even have an awareness of the math. Like, you don't need to be able to sit there at the table and do any sort of complicated math whatsoever. It's division. It really is legitimately only division. And division is taught in what, 3rd grade? So if you have a 3rd or 4th or 5th grade understanding of math, you should be fine enough. Now, it might not take you to the very top of the game, but fortunately there are computers that do all the calculus you need now to figure out if a play is good or bad, and if you learn how to use the programs, they'll just straight up tell you the answer. They're kind of like Google. Turns out, though, if you put a vague question into Google, it won't give you a good answer. One of my favorite things to do is when we're walking out the door, I'll ask the Google the weather, the Google Home program or whatever it is, and it'll spit out the weather. Then I'll just ask it some nonsensical question, and sometimes it'll give an answer that's usually wrong, or sometimes it'll give an answer that is like, I don't know that yet. And it turns out if you ask nonsensical questions, you'll get nonsensical answers. We already asked this question. Do you all think that I just don't see these questions? Look how far behind we are. I guess you can't see the scroll box. We're actually very far behind. Is that a World Series circuit bracelet? World Series circuits don't give bracelets. They give rings. I have 0 of those. What book should you get to learn GTO? Modern Poker Theory. There it is, right back there. Michael Acevedo wrote it. It is world class. There's no such thing as good tequila. I would probably agree with you. How many tournaments is ideal to play? Depends on your skills. You thought you would drink more Corona, but you still have 1.5 cases of the brew. Is the brew Corona or is the brew something else? Is Corona brewed? I don't even know. Have I been playing Scoop on PokerStars? No, I'm based in New York City. You don't play on PokerStars from New York City. There's a saying, you don't poop where you eat. And I'd like to continue eating at PokerStars. So no. Am I still playing much these days? Only on Sundays, while we're stuck at home. What stakes? I think the highest buy-in we played has been 5K. The lowest stake has been 50. $50 to $5,000 buy-in tournaments. A bit of a swing there. Mostly on the one unlicensed, unregulated site that has decent volume that I would definitely not recommend any of you play. Unless, of course, you don't care if they steal your money. I'm keeping enough money on there to play one day. And if they steal it from me, I realize that's the risk I'm taking to play on those sites. Did you answer your question about depositing more on a site to move up in stakes in tournaments instead of grinding your way up? I don't know, but I mean, really, this is just a question of, like, do you have a bankroll for it? But a bankroll, by the way, is not the amount of money you have on a specific site. The bankroll is how much money you have devoted to playing poker. You can have, like, let's say you have $10,000 to your name to play poker, and you put $500 on your site. You shouldn't act as if you have $500. You should act as if you have $10,000, right? What would you play if you wanted to put $50 online? So this is more of a question of what are you trying to do with your poker skills in your life? Play whichever game you like, whatever game you think is going to have the highest win rate. Can you play 5-10 with a $5,000 bankroll? You can do whatever you want. You can do that if you want to go broke. It's important to realize you can actually do whatever you want in poker, and you will have success some tiny portion of the time, pretty much no matter what you do. Do you think there's still a place for knowledgeable recreational players in poker moving forward? You've realized it's not 2006 anymore. Well, that's a good realization. Is there a place for them? You just always want to make sure that you're playing in games that you can beat, right? So find games you can beat and then play them. Recognize you're not going to be the biggest winning player. Have I considered live streaming your online sessions? Yes. I think I was actually the second streamer on Twitch who streamed poker. They banned me, of course, because Twitch did not allow you to play gambling games back then. So I got banned for streaming poker. The third streamer, a guy named Jason Somerville, got famous, so go figure. Go figure, go figure. We're not going to be talking about live poker being rigged today. We're running out of time. What's the best way to build a bankroll? Play a lot of games with an edge. How do you find a community to discuss hands with? Oh, I already made that for you. Go to pokercoaching.com, click in the community tab. It's literally called community. And join the Discord, join the forum. How do you navigate through the initial stages when everyone is shoving? Everyone's not shoving in the early stages unless you're playing really shallow stacked events. Now, you may be playing really shallow stacked events. If that's the case, just realize, sit there, play good cards, get it in with an edge. What's the app called? I think it's called Poker Coaching. Search Poker Coaching app. I'm not sure. Send us an email, support@pokercoaching.com. Let's see. As a halfway decent player, what's one book you could buy to improve? Mastering Small Stakes No Limit Hold'em. And go through the fundamentals course at pokercoaching.com. Go to pokercoaching.com/Cinco de Mayo. You can get a very, very solid discount on that. You don't play micro stakes and you play micro stakes and you don't think ICM is needed. ICM is very needed because if your opponents are not adhering to ICM, they are making significant blunders. Have we done Zoom cash training videos? Yeah, if you go to pokercoaching.com, look in the cash game masterclass. I have videos myself playing hours and hours of Zoom on Party Poker. Well, I guess what's it called? Fast Forward on Party Poker. I said I was the second streamer, not the first. Some other guy got banned before me. I was unaware. What's the GTO book called? It's literally right there. Modern Poker Theory. What has bigger swings? 27 max sit and goes, or whichever game has more players will probably end up with having more swings, although I'm not entirely sure about that when you talk about progressive knockouts. Late in a tournament with 20 big blinds. Are min re-raises after the flop turn river usually monsters? From people who are very unsophisticated, I would generally say they're pretty good hands. All right. What else do we have to talk about today? I think we got through everything. We discussed all the stages of the tournament. We kind of glossed over three-handed, heads-up, etc. But, just play good poker. Ask, where do I stand in this tournament? What should my objectives be, given the chip layouts, given the payout structure, given my opponent's strategies, and try to figure it out. And this is where, when you ask Jonathan little questions like, even if they're very specific, I can give you the answer for that exact scenario, but there are like 1,000 scenarios. And that is why you have to be able to figure out what to do in various spots by actually thinking about these things yourself. And that's what I try to teach you, right? We try to teach you at Poker Coaching how to think for yourself and become a great poker player. Any plans to give discounts on Prime Mind again? Probably not, but maybe they were on discounts. I don't know. What's a good e-wallet? I use NetTeller and Skrill. So yeah, as Mark said, discipline. Do the work. It's very, very important to do the work. A lot of people don't want to do the work. They want to be spoon-fed. And I realize that it's easier to be spoon-fed in the short term, but it's way harder long term, especially when the feeder decides to stop feeding you. And I'm not going to stop anytime soon, to be fair. I'm happy to sit here and be a resource for all of you indefinitely. But please, please, please work to better your poker skills. And you can do that for way cheaper than normal right now at pokercoaching.com/Cinco de Mayo. At the moment, because of restrictions, you can't buy my book in Germany. You can probably get the ebooks. Go to dnbpoker.com. If you can't get them on dnbpoker.com, send them an email, and I'm sure they will get you a PDF. I am sure they will get you a PDF. If you can't afford to buy a full book, well, the cheapest ones I have are something like $6. If you can't afford $6, I would tell you to get a job, work the job, get a hold of some money, and then go from there. What's Just GTO's real name? Justin. He's very nice. I like Justin a lot. All right. Have a great day. Enjoy yourselves. Thanks for being here. I'll be back Friday, bright and early, 9 a.m. Eastern Time, for another episode of A Little Coffee. Good luck. Have fun. Click like. Click subscribe.